Okay, what is critical thinking? When I think of critical thinking, a couple things come to mind. The first is the ability to take in information or an argument and determine its validity, determine how true it is, and if you should change your behavior based on that information. Okay, so when you hear something like bacon is bad for you, or bacon causes cancer, as an example, a person who thinks critically is going to ask a few questions. They're going to ask, what is the percentage increase, or how much does the percent risk increase by eating bacon? In the study, how much bacon and how frequently did the participants eat the bacon? How many people were in the study? Has the study's results been replicated? Have multiple studies been done over this that have proven or yielded the same result? And then based on all that, should you change your behavior? Because it's perfectly reasonable that you might get to the end of all that information and still happily eat bacon without having to worry about getting cancer. So this seems like a lot. Like, do I have to run everything that I hear through a battery of half a dozen questions? But what you'll see is that the better you get at thinking critically, the more you use the tools, the more that it becomes second nature. All right, and it's not just like reasoning with statistics that we'll be talking about, although that's part of the course. It's other types of mathematics as well. We'll explore other forms of making arguments like logic and logical fallacies. We'll talk about game theory, which is not like board games, but it's a theory that can describe things as varied as why countries go to war, to why it's so difficult for you and your significant other to pick a place to eat on Friday night. We will look at graph theory, which is not the kind of graphs that you're used to in your traditional math classes. It's kind of the mathematical way to describe interactions between and among objects, okay? And it won't just be math concepts. We'll also look at some other things to help us think critically, like behavioral psychology. So it turns out that our brains sometimes get in the way of us being able to think clearly. And so we will look at different ways that our brain does that so that we can watch out for it. We'll watch out for and learn about confirmation bias. We'll talk about hindsight bias. We'll talk about all these different ways that, that our brain trips us up in getting at the truth and makes it harder for us to make decisions. So we'll look at those kinds of things. What else am I missing here? We'll look at complex versus complicated systems. So that we'll look at a bunch of different tools. All right, now, in the math concepts that we'll talk about, I'm going to try to take the most practical, applicable pieces of those concepts for you to learn about. All right, so we're not going to get super theoretical. We're going to try and make them as applicable and useful as possible so that they'll help you actually navigate your day-to-day life.